Benchmarks aren't really my thing. There are much better channels for this stuff, like Tech Yes City. So while I will include the benchmarks in this video, I want to give my experience of Intel and NVIDIA versus AMD, and which I would recommend and why. I use the systems for gaming, streaming, music production, and video editing, so my use is pretty heavy. I can sum it up quickly though. This video would have been done 6 months ago if it wasn't for all the issues I had with AMD. I'm doing this video now because the issues are finally fixed, most of them anyway. I changed every single part trying to find the issue. I changed the CPU from 1800X to 2700X, Gigabyte RX 580 to Gigabyte Vega 64, and then to ASUS Vega 64. I even tried my NVIDIA cards in the system. And I changed motherboard 4 times. Started with the Gigabyte K3, went to the K7, then Gigabyte X470 Aorus Gaming 7 Wi-Fi, and even to an ASUS motherboard. Now I'm back on the X470 Aorus Gaming 7 Wi-Fi. Changed RAM, power supply, hard drives, several Windows 10 installations, everything. And what was the problem in the end? It seems all the parts were good. It was actually a software thing. So all the motherboards, both CPUs, all the graphics cards, they're all fine. But somehow, after many updates, that's when it finally started working properly. So my current guess is a compatibility thing. AMD doesn't seem to have the same support as Intel and NVIDIA. Now that it's fixed, I can say both systems perform really well. Here's a list of what I have in each. Corsair have been really solid with all their products, very happy with those. Gigabyte came through in the end, and other than the louder whine on the Vega 64, then the ASUS version, it's been really good. The X470 Aorus Gaming 7 Wi-Fi has been great too. And it's great that it has Bluetooth. I was actually really worried that the Gigabyte motherboards were causing all the issues. I've had a bit of a shaky past with them, but I've had it in the build for about 3 months now, and no concerns. One thing I really like about Gigabyte is that they seem to put on the extras, like 3 display ports on the Vega 64, while ASUS only give 2 of each. I actually have 3 monitor setups, so I really appreciate things like this. That said, ASUS have also been solid. What they lack in features, they make up in quality. So I'll give my conclusion at the end. First, let's get onto some benchmarks. I have Bryan here from Tech Yes City to help out. If you want the latest news and tests for graphics cards, motherboards, chips, monitors, and RGB gear that will make you pro, definitely check out his channel. Okay, enough Zai talk, time for Bryan talk now.
So here we are, guys. We're going to benchmark a few different games on Zai's computer now. And the way I benchmark on my channel behind the scenes is I have these 2 applications. They're pretty much installed in the same MSI Afterburner download. And so what we want to do is we want to open up MSI Afterburner first and just click that little startup icon so the program will start up every time you start up Windows, as well as left clicking on that little cog and then these 2 here, and then going over now to monitoring. And in this menu, we can actually select all the different things we want to monitor while we're benchmarking. For me, I usually do GPU temperature and GPU usage, as well as a baseline of getting CPU temperature and CPU usage. So I select these 2 on top of what we'll see down below here is frame rate. So we want to left click this little icon here, frame rate, and then also 1% and 0.1% lows. That's pretty important to make sure these are selected, because usually when you're benchmarking, you want the average FPS as well as these 2 displaying here. And the average FPS will show with the frame rates right here. So going down now to 1% lows, we want to left click this icon here, show in on-screen display, and then below that, show in on-screen display as well for the 0.1% lows. Left clicking back to frame rate, we can then go show on-screen display, but I like to go graph because I like to see the frames in real time, and it also looks pretty good if you're recording for a video. So after we've done that, we can click OK, but we can go back into this menu by left clicking again, and then going over to benchmark tab up here. And then for me, I usually set these different keys to F7 and F8, though in this case, I'm on Zai's computer, so I may have to make another key for this. So I'm actually going to make these F8 and F9 because Zai uses F6 and F7 to record his videos on his desktop. So after we've done that, we set our hotkeys to those so we can easily start benchmarking and then stop benchmarking by pressing F8 and F9. But below that, we've got benchmark results file, so we can left click browse, and then we can go to a folder for this, videos, benchmarks, and then we can go open. So that'll now save all the data that we collect while we're benchmarking to this particular folder. Now we click OK. So we're done with Afterburner for now. We can also overclock our graphics card, but that's a different topic for a different day. But we want to move over now to River Tuner Statistics Server, because this is the actual second backup application that's essentially going to work in tandem with Afterburner to get those results. So I want to left click this, start with Windows, because this is such a great application. I usually like to make the text a little bit bigger because I benchmark. The numbers are more important than the actual gameplay itself. And also with that, I want to go show own statistics and left click that. So now pretty much we're ready to benchmark. Because this application is really good, it'll inject into all the modern APIs like DirectX 12, Vulkan, DirectX 11, and that's just why it's so good for benchmarking, as well as giving you those live 1% and 0.1% lows. With that said, let's move on to Zai's favorite game first up, Quake. So now also for benchmarking, it's very important to get a context of what settings you're using. So currently in Quake Champions, Zai has his monitor at 1440p resolution, that's 16:9. And then for the actual settings themselves, he's using medium and high and ultra and medium blend settings here. So it's a sort of like his custom settings that he's made that suits him. But regardless of that, we can still benchmark. So we've got the FPS limiter on infinite, so it's pretty much uncapped, which when you're benchmarking any sort of game or graphics card or CPU, you do want to put off any caps so you can get a true performance figure.
Round begins in 3, 2, 1, fight. Lead lost. Tank. Teams are tied. First blood. Taken. Excellent.
So here we are now with our benchmark file after we've finished benchmarking Quake Champions. Now the matches were only about 2 minutes, so I did run it 3 times just to get more accurate figures. But we can see here that we're getting around 150 average FPS, and the 1% lows are actually pretty impressive, being around 96 and 94 FPS. Now 0.1% lows, they are there, but you can see here that they're like 26 and they go to 67. Basically, the 0.1% lows are your worst frame-to-frame transitions. They're not that important. In this case, particularly with Quake Champions, they weren't important at all because I didn't notice any stuttering while I was playing this game. So I'd say the 1% lows are a really positive figure here, being near that of 100 FPS. So in other words, this PC is running Quake Champions very well. Let's move over now to Apex Legends and get some benchmark numbers in that. So now we've opened up Apex Legends. We're in 1440p 16:9 resolution again, and moving through the settings, Zai likes to keep things for Apex Legends at pretty much max across the board, even having an insane 8GB of VRAM usage on the texture streaming budget, except for the spot shadow details. He's got this on low. So we're going to see how this benchmark runs in 1440p on Apex Legends. So let the F8 button mashing begin. So we just finished up with Apex Legends, and that was quite a lengthy benchmark, going close to 9 minutes, I believe. But we got some really good numbers here. The average FPS going over 90, and I'm probably sure Zai would have got a lot more FPS if he didn't have all those settings maxed. But regardless, we can see here, even on the max settings with the 1080 Ti and the 8700K, Zai's getting great 1% and 0.1% lows. So all there's left to do now is benchmark one more title, and that's Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Just going to jump in here real quick. Unfortunately, I didn't have Tomb Raider set up for streaming, so the music was too loud when Bryan was giving his conclusion for it. Basically, he said we got an average of 86 FPS both times, with a minimum of 71. But then we did it without OBS recording, and it looks like we lose about 10% performance from that. We were using OBS the whole time for the others, which means the system can do better. But if you're streaming, this is a good indication of performance. Excellent build for it.
So basically, in a nutshell, that is benchmarking 101. Of course, the next step would be to start overclocking Zai's machine, which is, again, another topic for another day. Hopefully, we can collaborate in the future. But in the meantime, if you guys have any questions about benchmarking, whether it be 1%, 0.1% lows, or things like average and minimum FPS, then I'd love hearing your thoughts and opinions. And I'm going to put you guys back onto Zai. Peace out for now. Bye.
Hi, my name is Zai and I'm back. So the 1080 Ti system is a beast. I love it. It handles everything I throw at it. Everything just seems to work. Now let's get back to the AMD system. Obviously it's a cheaper build and a Vega 64 is not going to compete with the 1080 Ti, but it's still pretty good. What I want to focus on here a bit is how different the numbers are when running OBS. I could probably optimize it better, but I put a fair few hours into it and couldn't work it out. And that's over the space of a year. It's not like I just tried once and gave up. Whereas the NVIDIA system was just easy. So while I'm sure someone probably knows the answer out there and I may even hear about it in the comments, it shouldn't be this difficult. And if it is, maybe AMD is just made for the elite. My video editing software is actually kind of old, so I can't use the AMD encoder. The files it creates aren't compatible. This is what's putting me off AMD builds at the moment. After building two separate systems and experiencing the same difficulties, and just the fact there seems to be some sort of limitation, I don't really have time to mess around with this stuff. The games run really well with FreeSync, so just as a gaming PC, video editing, music production, graphic design, random use, yeah, everything seems pretty good. But when it comes to streaming and recording video, maybe not so much. I'm not going to go through the list of problems because I don't think they'll come up again, but it has been a long journey. So the system is solid, finally, but I still wouldn't use it for streaming or my main testing system, mainly because of the whole OBS thing. No issues with the Intel NVIDIA build, it was easy. And that's my conclusion. AMD has some really good performance and I really like using the system, but for what I need, I have to stick with Intel and NVIDIA for now. I'll just mention though, all Vega 64 cards seem to have a loud whine to them, as soon as they get under load. I haven't heard that on any of the NVIDIA cards. Anyway, if you want to know what's good for what, again, go check out Tech City. Bryan explains things in more detail and shows more comparisons, and also looks at temperatures and power consumption, because that's the lesson to learn here. There is more to building systems than just numbers. Functionality is huge. Like with everything, you have to find what's going to suit you. So I want to say big thanks to Bryan for helping out with the systems, and also my opinions are my own. Despite these being sponsored builds, I'm not biased. I've just given my honest point of view based on my experience, but because they are sponsored, I gotta mention the products and the companies. You don't have to stick around for this, but I would appreciate it if you did. So much love to the following. Thanks to Corsair for the power supplies, memory, SSDs, coolers, lights, fans, and cases. They've all been great by the way. Very happy, we'll continue to use them. If the 570X case had hinged panels like the 500D, I would like it a lot more. But for now, I do prefer the 500D. Great case. Good news, I'm now trusting Gigabyte hardware again. So keep in mind you can give them a go. Not their mice though, not yet anyway. If you're buying in Australia, definitely check out MWAVE. They're an online tech retailer, and they've been a huge support for the channel and I personally buy from them anyway. They were very generous and got me the 8700K, and AMD provided the 1800X and also the 2700X chips, so shout out to them for trying to help and trying to get the system up to scratch. I bought the ASUS graphics cards, but ASUS did provide the motherboard that I wanted. It's obviously been great, despite the fact I still don't know how to disable the lights when I turn the computer off. Anyway, ASUS, thanks for helping support what I do. And that's it for now. As always, subscribe, like and share this video, and I'll catch you in the next.